talk about some of the more recent moves by Iran on what we would call the global jihad chessboard. And this to frame what is going on as well, and you'll hear after me from my colleague Fred Fleitz about the actual nuclear weapons negotiations talks. So everything in here, open source, of course. So the nuclear talks and Iran's drive to achieve deliverable nuclear weapons capability really is for the purpose not just to have nukes, although that's an end goal in and of itself, but rather to further its broader revolutionary goals. Omri Cheren published a really interesting piece not very long ago, just a couple of weeks ago, and he was addressing the nuclear talks. And he says that the Obama administration is promoting, really implementing, a policy of deception and delusion with those talks. The joint plan of action upon which those talks are based was signed in November 2013. But right there, in the prologue to negotiations, really, that plan of action gave Iran just about everything that it already wanted. The right to enrich, the right to keep all of its enriched uranium, albeit some of that has to be diluted down and changed to some other forms. It gets to continue its centrifuge R&D. It gets to continue building at least elements for installation ultimately at the Arak plant, which is its plutonium heavy water reactor site. And it's going to get to continue working on its intercontinental ballistic missile capability, which is the delivery system for nuclear weapons. Terror support, completely unaddressed. The diplomatic processes they are aggressively pursuing, that is, the Obama administration is pursuing, inevitably will yield an Iran armed with nuclear weapons. So, yes, the Iranians are pursuing nuclear weapons. They do that through various means, and they pursue their objectives overall through these various means, through terrorist proxies, through cyber warfare. These things are tools in the end. So what does that regime seek? It's a jihadist regime. The Constitution says so. It seeks to enforce the revolution at home and export it abroad. That's number one. Number two, it seeks geostrategic domination of the Persian Gulf region and even beyond. And finally, it looks for to claim global leadership of the global jihad movement away from the Sunnis, with which it has been engaged in a struggle ever since the reported, at least to us, death of Muhammad in 632. And finally, the destruction of Israel, the U.S., and the Western system more generally. If and when Iran achieves deliverable nuclear weapons, that's game over. And that is why the achievement of deliverable nuclear weapons for this regime is a sine qua non. In other words, they gotta get it. They'll do anything to get it. I think the Iranians' intention is to surround both Saudi Arabia, its nemesis for leadership of the global jihad, and of course Israel. You've got the Iranians boasting at this point in time that they now control 4 Arab capitals: Tripoli, Lebanon; Damascus, Syria; Baghdad, Iraq; and Sana'a in Yemen, plus Tehran, of course. Now look at how that dominance of that geography surrounds Saudi Arabia. What's the prize? The prize are the Saudi oil fields and Mecca and Medina. That's the prize. Israel too. But in this broader sense, and some of the moves we're seeing more recently, I think they're going for Saudi Arabia. This comes to us by way of the Israelis, and it is a satellite image of a new Iranian ICBM sitting on a launch pad outside of Tehran. It's 89 feet tall. It is definitely intercontinental in reach. That means this one, at least, they've got others, but this one is not aimed at Israel. This is aimed much farther away than Israel. The Pentagon issued open source reporting that by 2015, that's where we are right now, Iran would have the capability to reach the United States, continental United States, with an ICBM from Iran. Well, folks, there it is. That missile can carry conventional or non-conventional, meaning nuclear, warheads, and its range, as I said, can reach U.S. and Europe. Deputy Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who testified on 19 January before Congress, the Foreign Relations Committee of Senator Bob Menendez, And he admitted in questioning that the White House is no longer negotiating to stop Iran from a breakout capability to nuclear weapons, but only to get a better alarm. How did we get this far? How did we get to the point where an American administration is capitulating on this level and acquiescing to an Iranian-dominated Middle East? Well, I think it goes back to the paper that's on the table here, my 2009 Rise of the Iran Lobby paper, which describes the influence operations of a number of groups operating in the Capitol, on Capitol Hill, as lobbyists and as influence operators to change opinion and ultimately to change U.S. policy on the Middle East and Iran. This book, called A Time to Attack, it's recently published by Matthew Kronig, who is a professor at Georgetown University. He also is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. And in this book, he outlines and works through all the options for dealing with Iran. The diplomacy, the negotiations, sanctions, and finally containment or deterrence if and when Iran achieves a nuclear weapons capability. However, he comes to the conclusion, not quite as definitively stated in this book, but as recounted later, and this quote at the bottom there is from him after the publication of the book, as a last resort, an Israeli strike, because he knows the Obama administration is not going to do this, and the year or two of breathing space at a minimum that would buy would be preferable to acquiescing to a nuclear Iran. Last slide. This is, of course, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, invited now to address the U.S. Congress in early March this year. And he takes very seriously, as he says here, his obligation to make every effort to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weaponry that will be aimed at the State of Israel. We can hope only that he means to keep that word and look forward to his visit. Thank you very much.